My mom stole millions from my company and bought a house, a car and luxury trips. I exposed her at a public corporate dinner, and the police arrested her on the spot. My accountant calls yesterday afternoon and I answer the phone with a stupid, distracted smile because I'm in the middle of a meeting and I expect a spreadsheet detail. Nothing dramatic. He sounds flat, almost hollow, and then says the word that makes my stomach drop. Incongruities. He walks me through line items, transfers I didn't authorize, vendor names that lead nowhere, and a pattern that maps perfectly onto the extravagant life my mother suddenly. I'm Vanessa, I'm 27, and I make more money than most people in my circle can imagine. I have always been generous with my mother. She left Dad years ago after an affair that tore the family apart, and for a while I live with my father because I can't stand being in the middle of that mess. Over time we patch things together. Calls, holiday visits, the kind of forgiveness that feels more like acceptance than real reconciliation. She never holds a steady job, so when I am offered what many call a helping hand, I give it without blinking. For me it never feels like a sacrifice. When my mother starts dating her boyfriend, I approve because he seems stable, he works, he appears decent, and I tell myself that finally she has someone who can look after her. For months they seem like a good match. Then the signs begin. A new car, unexpected trips, brand names and photos I never asked about. At first I rationalize. I tell myself his job must pay well. I explain away the diamonds and the weekend getaways with quiet assumptions. I am not naive. I just choose comfort over suspicion. Everything explodes when my accountant shows me the details. He points to outgoing transfers from the company account that correspond with the times my mother posts pictures or mentions purchases. Large sums move in ways that match hotel reservations, jeweler invoices, and a down payment that appears related to a car registered under a different name. The pattern is too precise to be coincidence. My brain clicks, fast and clean, aligning dates with photos, invoices with purchases. The realization hits like cold water, and I find myself walking around the apartment in a bubble of disbelief. It is not only the money that stings, it is the betrayal itself. Trust is a currency I value above most others, and to discover that my own mother treats it like a ledger entry is unbearable. She taught me how to weigh people, how to read faces for generosity or malice, and I trusted her to know what ethics mean. The idea that she would systematically siphon funds from something I built feels like an erasure of my effort, a slow theft of my authorship. I spend the night at my kitchen table with spreadsheets open on my laptop, clicking links, tracing transfers with methodical calm. My body does not betray me with dramatic tremors. Instead, my mind narrows into work. Numbers feel honest in a way that people are not. My accountant and I document everything. Statements, timestamps, vendor receipts, and the pile of evidence grows like a quiet, immovable mountain. There is a perverse comfort in the clarity of paper trails. I have not told anyone. Not my father, not friends, not colleagues. Part of that is strategy. When you run a company of any size, rumors can spiral and investors start asking questions. I need precision, not gossip. Part of it is pride. When my mother texts later asking for money with the same casual tone she always uses, heart emojis, small apologies, I feel the bile of contradiction. She asks for rent. She advertises luxury. The cognitive dissonance makes me sick. There is a private self and a public self in me. Public Vanessa is calm, measured, professional. Private Vanessa writes scripts of confrontation and imagines faces when the truth comes out. I find myself rehearsing things I do not intend to shout. I picture a scene where I remove a mask and the room goes silent. That private part of me grows teeth when betrayal is personal. I also feel a heavy practicality. The sums are traceable and the law offers remedies. My accountant and I start building a legal file. Secure copies of everything, chains of custody for documents, a timeline that reads like a prosecution brief. The methodical part of me prefers this route. Freeze accounts, secure restitution, let legal systems move. But another, more visceral part wonders about justice in public, about humiliation, about making the betrayal visible to the entire community that once sympathized with her. The question of optics creeps in. Do I make this a private legal matter, or a public reckoning? Grief sits next to anger. This is not the grief of losing a wallet. It is the grief of losing the mother I thought I had. The one who called to ask about my day, who taught me recipes and sent voice notes of laughter. Those relics of tenderness do not reconcile with bank transfers and secret purchases. I keep the small audio of her laugh like a fossil from another life. And it hollows me out because it refuses to cohabit with the evidence. For now I plan. Not in an impulsive cinematic way, but with the careful plotting of someone who knows how messy emotional choices become when they lead. I write lists of questions to ask if I confront her. When did the payments start? Who provided invoices? Who manages these accounts? I practice tones that sound controlled. I want to ask, not scream. I want their responses recorded, clean and clear. Yet a sliver of doubt scratches at me. What if there is an explanation? I force that door open because certainty without proof is dangerous. But the paper trail is long and ugly. Innocent explanations shrink beneath the weight of timestamps and vendor names. Still, I remind myself to keep interrogatives ready, to listen for plausible deniability even as I document contradictions. That night, I sleep with the laptop open and the files like armor. I imagine a timeline where I confront them gently, one where I call the police straight away, and another where I expose them publicly in a way that leaves no room for denial. Each version feels different in its consequences, each involves loss. None feels clean. My relationship with my mother is fracturing in slow slices. The calls come and I let them ring. I find myself watching her social media with a detached, clinical gaze, matching posts to transactions until the pattern is a photograph I cannot unsee. The boyfriend's face in photos is unremarkable most days, but his sudden comforts now look like the trophies of theft. I stare at his images and catalog details the way an investigator notes a suspect's tells. I do not yet know what I will do next. For now, I gather, I document. I balance the pulse of revenge against the necessity of legal closure. And I keep my face steady for anyone who might otherwise misread my calm as indifference. I plan my next call to the accountant to ask for the next layer of documentation. And I sleep with the quiet drum of that phone call looping in my head, shaping the plan like a metronome. My accountant found a trail of unauthorized transfers that match my mother's sudden luxuries. For days I've stayed methodical, documenting timestamps, tracing vendors, building a case file while I decide whether to handle this quietly through legal channels or make a public spectacle. I haven't told anyone yet. Part of me wants justice in private, neatly resolved with frozen accounts and restitution. Another part burns for exposure, for the humiliation that would make the betrayal impossible to shrug off. The days that follow are a study in containment. I move through them like someone carrying a glass sculpture, slow, careful, fearing any misstep that might shatter evidence or tip off the people I am about to accuse. My emails are surgical, my calls are scheduled and short. I coordinate with my accountant and a lawyer I trust, and with each meeting the perimeter of certainty tightens. Dates, amounts, recurring small withdrawals disguised as vendor payments, invoices with bad addresses, a shell company that only exists on paper. The evidence is not dramatic in a cinematic sense. It is paper and pixels. PDF invoices, bank statements, metadata on photos, email trails, and timestamps that speak the truest language I've ever trusted, numbers. We compile spreadsheets where rows line up like train cars, all heading toward the same station. The sums are significant enough to matter legally and symbolically. They're not petty, they're not the result of a misunderstanding. They map to luxury purchases they could not plausibly afford on to minimize wages. My lawyer advises caution. Freezing accounts is the move, she says, but you must be ready for fallout. Investors will ask. There's a reputational hit to the company. She is pragmatic and clear-eyed in a way that comforts me. She frames the choices as variables to weigh, not moral absolutes. Legal closure is one path. Asset freezes, restitution claims, criminal charges. It is tidy, enforceable, and leaves open the possibility of facing them in court where the truth sits under oath. That path has the advantage of institutional weight. What the law records is hard to erase. Another voice, smaller and sharper, whispers of spectacle. Public exposure is immediate and theatrical. To make them stand under the light, and to watch their explanations dissolve. It promises catharsis. Witnesses to confirm the betrayal, public shaming that removes the possibility of future manipulation, the clean cut of social accountability. But spectacle is a double-edged blade. It could damage the company, hurt innocent employees, and create a media circus that feeds on the salaciousness of familial conflict. The calculus is not only vengeance, it is collateral. I draw up a list of possible tactics. Option 1. The legal route. Freeze, sue for restitution, press charges, and let the justice system do its work. Option 2. Private confrontation followed by negotiation. Present the evidence, demand repayment, set terms, and remove them from any financial access. Option 3. Controlled public exposure. Confront them in a setting where the evidence is undeniable and authorities are ready, ensuring they cannot escape immediate consequences. Option 4. A social sting. Gather community witnesses and force a public accounting that punishes their social capital. Each path has trade-offs. Each option fractures into sub-questions. Will creditors notice? Will employees panic if the company faces PR issues? Will investors pull out if they smell instability? The calculus is not merely personal vengeance, it is corporate responsibility. That realization bites hard. I did not want this. I did not sign up to balance familial betrayal with fiduciary duty. But here I am, a CEO who must protect a business, its people, and her own moral center. In private, I make contingency plans that feel almost like contingency theater. I write scripts for what I will say if I confront them quietly, lines that are cold, factual, and clinical. I write another script for a public reveal that anticipates their denials and maps out the exact documents I will lay out. I rehearse asking them simple questions and recording their responses. I consider security measures, recorded conversations where legal, 2 witnesses present, a neutral mediator if I choose negotiation, a lawyer on standby if I move to arrest or press charges. At night, the emotional undercurrent pulls. My mother reaches out with messages that ring false in light of what I know. She asks about rent, about small favors, about family photos. My thumb hovers over replies because any communication risks contaminating the case, or gives them a window to burn records. The instinct to answer, to soothe, to keep a bridge, a part of me that never stopped wanting her approval, wants to pick up the phone. But the spreadsheet sits open and the evidence is patient. I don't reply immediately. I document the message instead, saving it alongside the others. There's another problem, moral optics. If I publicly expose my mother's crimes, I risk being painted as cold and vindictive. Families are messy, and audiences often prefer a sympathetic villain or a wounded adult child more than the complicated truth. I imagine the headlines and the comments, the way strangers render moral judgments with surgical cruelty. My chest tightens at the thought of a feed filling with speculative vitriol. I am not immune to fear. So who should know? I begin to think about confidence. Telling my father feels untenable. He and my mother have a history that is painful to reopen. He would implode and the fallout would be messy in its own right. Telling key board members or investors would be strategic but risky. Leaks can happen, and the rumor mill would compound the damage. Telling a best friend feels like the least dangerous emotional outlet. Someone who can hold my head and help me not make a mistake driven by raw heat. Someone who can call me out on theatrics and keep me grounded in strategy. I pick up my phone and call Anna, my oldest friend. She answers on the first ring with surprise and warmth. Vanessa, she says. My voice is measured. I tell her I'm dealing with a complicated family and corporate issue, that I need a friend who can help think strategically and keep secrets. She does not ask for details immediately. She senses the boundary. We set a time to meet. I do not tell her anything by text. Choosing Anna is deliberate. She is practical, level-headed, and has no stake in the company. She is the kind of friend who will be honest when I am being dramatic and gentle when I am hurting. In the daylight, the plan narrows into workable moves. We will secure the documentation and prepare the legal path while we test private confrontation. We will not act in a way that endangers the company or employees. But I also write in a drawer of my mind a crueler ledger. That idea of humiliation that plays out in flashes. A public unveiling where their explanations are swallowed by evidence and they have no escape route. That ledger is part justice, part theatrical revenge. It sits there like a loaded photograph I turn over in my hands, knowing its power and risk. I sleep less. My dreams are short bursts of scenes where I stand at a podium and the curtain drops to reveal the truth, or where I sit in a courtroom and listen for a guilty verdict. I wake with the same binary choice spinning in my chest. Each morning, I add a validation point to the file. Each night, I imagine consequences and limit collateral damage. This is the part where I decide to bring someone close into the orbit, someone to help me think, someone to hold me accountable to the plan I choose. I am not ready to go public. I'm not ready for the shattering moment that will come when I name them. But I am done carrying everything alone. Anna will come over tomorrow afternoon. I will show her the evidence, in a way that is precise and contained, and ask for her counsel. Whether she will urge discretion or spectacle, I cannot predict. For now, the tilt is toward strategy. The lines between punishment and justice blur in my head. I want them both removed from power, and also made to feel the social weight of their actions. I want my mother to understand that betrayal has consequences that outlast the gloss of new cars and expensive dinners. But I also know that crossing the line into public humiliation could ripple beyond the guilty parties. For now, strategy trumps spectacle. I lock the folder with a password, back up the evidence in 3 places, and set the next meeting with my closest advisor. I do not know where this will end. I only know what I am doing next. Bringing in the person who has kept my secret since adolescence, laying the evidence bare for the one friend I trust, and deciding together whether the scale tips toward court or stage. My accountant found unauthorized transfers that matched my mother's sudden luxuries. For days I compiled evidence with my lawyer and planned options. Legal action, private negotiation, or a public expose. I decided to bring Anna, my oldest friend, into the loop to help me weigh strategy and keep me steady. We agreed to be cautious, document everything, and test a private confrontation first. The argument starts like most family fights do. Small, banal, and then swelling into something ugly. She calls mid-afternoon, her voice slipping into the familiar tone that always sounded like a rehearsed apology. Vanessa, Carino, can you help with the rent this month? The landlord is being difficult, she says, and the words land like a challenge more than a plea. I am sitting at my desk and the folder with the evidence is open but minimized on my screen, like a window I am trying not to stare at. I feel the weight of that spreadsheet under my fingers, even when my hands are idle. How much do you need? I ask, deliberately neutral. She rattles off an amount that is small compared to what we documented but framed like a crisis. It's a tactic I've seen 1,000 times. Minimize the ask, normalize dependency. I say I can cover it, and then I add a condition I had not rehearsed aloud. We need clarity on the money you've been spending. Can you tell me where the funds for that new car and the trips came from? Silence stretches. Then a laugh that sounds too bright. Oh, sweetheart, don't be dramatic. You know how Jorge works, he's been doing well. We've had some luck. Her boyfriend's name lands in the sentence like a shield. Luck. I taste bile. Luck doesn't show up on company ledgers, I say. My voice is calm, intentionally so. It's a voice I use in meetings when people try to spin off the facts. There are transfers that line up with your purchases. I need answers. She bristles. The next 10 minutes condense into a war of tone and guilt tripping. She says I don't understand the sacrifices she made. She frames herself as the victim of circumstance. She mentions the divorce like it still justifies a long list of favors. I feel my temper rise, not at the divorce, but at the way she treats my help like a recurring line item instead of reciprocity. When I pivot to demand repayment, or even an explanation that makes sense, she shifts the blame in a way that tastes like reflex. You're being cruel. After all I've done for you. I thought you'd understand that family is complicated. Her voice tightens into something brittle. Her boyfriend, Jorge, then cuts in sudden, protective, and loud over the phone as though he is within earshot. You will not talk to her like that, he says without preface. He claims a right to policing my tone toward my mother, and his intrusion is the exact catalyst that flips me. There is something feral that surfaces in me at that point. Not calculated revenge, but a raw, incandescent fury that has been simmering since the spreadsheets revealed the truth. I stop trying to be clinical. You have been stealing from me, I say, and the words are not a question. You and Jorge have been taking from my company to fund your life. I have the documents. The silence on the other end is immediate and then hysterical. My mother denies, then gaslights, then pleads. Jorge tries to interject with threats, veiled cowardly, that echo of someone who knows how to intimidate without direct confrontation. The conversation disintegrates so fast it feels like a collapse rather than an argument. She accuses me of dramatizing, of trying to ruin her. He demands respect. I demand the truth. I don't give them the satisfaction of a confession. I do not play into their theater of denials. Instead, I tell them that I will take steps to secure the company accounts and that if they have nothing to hide, they will cooperate. I hang up before they can spin a further story. I leave the house instead of staying for the moral calculus that usually tethers me to family. I cannot breathe near them without wanting to either hit or surrender, and both options feel destructive. I walk to Anna's apartment with the evidence on my phone, my hands shaking in a way I had not allowed myself to before. The city looks unreal, like a set where everyone else is acting their normal lives and I am the outlier with a ruined script. When Anna opens the door, the first thing she does is hug me hard enough to bruise. I sob, one full-bodied, terrible sound that releases a calendar's worth of restrained fury. She sits me down and I tell the story in a compressed, precise way. The transfers, the receipts, the pattern. I show her the spreadsheets and the invoices and the date-stamped photos. Her face shifts from shock to a kind of pragmatic focus that comforts me. We plan like conspirators. First, Anna insists on emotional triage. You need someone to keep you human so this doesn't become a vengeance spiral, she says bluntly. She is right. Then the plotting begins in earnest. We list tactical moves with the same sterile logic I've used with my lawyer. Secure access to accounts, remove their signatures, set up monitoring, and prepare a controlled exposure option if negotiations fail. The plan we craft is not purely reactionary. It is designed to minimize collateral harm. We will assemble a controlled reveal only if they refuse restitution or try to flee. We decide on witnesses. 2 trusted board members, a lawyer, and a security professional. Anna suggests psychological contingencies. Who to call if I need backup that is not legal, someone to remind me to breathe in the moment I might choose humiliation over justice. But then the conversation shifts to a darker joy. Anna is not without a theatrical streak. If we're going to do it, she says with an almost mischievous glint, we should do it in a way they will never recover from socially. We laugh in that grim, private way conspirators do, acknowledging the wrongness and the deliciousness in equal measure. We draft scenarios. One involves a staged company event, formal, public, with a reveal that cannot be dismissed. Another imagines a quiet negotiation where documents are signed under watch and repayment plans are enforced, with anonymity preserved for the moment. Each option requires logistics, timing, and a readiness to manage fallout. Before I leave Anna's, we role-play. I practice how I will speak in front of a room, how I will present evidence without hysterics, how I will command the narrative. Anna plays the parts of my mother and Jorge in alternating voices, ridiculous and small, and then, when she imitates Jorge, menacing enough to make my skin crawl. The rehearsal is cathartic and terrifying in equal parts. I sleep at Anna's that night because going back feels like entering a minefield. She leaves before dawn to a day job, but texts me regular check-ins. In the silence between sleeps, I realize I have crossed a line from private pain into public plotting. I used to believe family matters could be mended with patience. Now I see that sometimes you have to dismantle an empire to reclaim what's yours. Still, part of me holds regret like a coin in my palm. Cool, heavy, and beautiful. The person I will humiliate is the person who once put a blanket on my childhood floor and promised to keep me safe. That conflict sits beside the spreadsheets, refusing to be reconciled. Revenge might be the medicine that restores my sense of justice, but I know it might also leave an ache where forgiveness once could have grown. We set a date to move forward. A week to secure accounts and a plan to test private confrontation. If they refuse to make amends, or if their denials persist in the face of proof. For now, I carry the knowledge like a weapon I am learning to wield carefully. My accountant uncovered unauthorized transfers that matched my mother's sudden luxuries. I compiled evidence with my lawyer and brought Anna into the loop. We secured accounts, rehearsed a reveal, and weighed legal action against public exposure. We chose a controlled option. A company dinner-themed revelations, where the evidence would be undeniable and police would be present to prevent flight. This was the night we put the plan into motion. The event hall feels calm and intentional. I arrive early and take a breath that surprises me with how steady it is. Anna meets me at the entrance and squeezes my hand, a small gesture that grounds the whole operation. The guest list is wide on purpose. Employees and their families, board members, trusted clients, and a few community members whose presence would make the reveal public and accountable. Behind a decorated curtain we have arranged a gallery of proof. Printed invoices, highlighted ledgers, screenshots with timestamps, email threads, and a clear mapping of transfers. My lawyer and 2 board members stand ready with copies of everything, and a plainclothes police liaison waits at the exits. I start the evening with normal business updates. I speak about growth plans, about the team's hard work, and about new internal policies for financial controls. My voice is professional and measured because the goal is to protect the company and the people who depend on it. I do not frame the night as spectacle. I frame it as stewardship. When I reach the part of my speech about immediate changes to payment authorizations, Anna pulls the curtain. The fabric falls away and the collage of evidence faces the room. A hush settles as people lean forward. The invoices and screenshots are pinned and annotated so each connection is clear. Dates line up with social posts, vendor names match reservations and purchases, and amounts trace back to accounts associated with my mother's circle. I walk the audience through the timeline, pointing at highlighted lines and reading short excerpts that tie names to orders. I keep my tone factual and calm because the documents themselves carry the moral weight. My mother is in the audience. She looks startled and then defensive. Jorge stands close by with a posture that seeks to protect. They try to speak, but their explanations fray under the light of printed records. Their denials do not hold. The police, positioned as agreed, move forward with professional restraint. They ask my mother and Jorge to leave with them, read them their rights, and place handcuffs. The sound of those handcuffs closing is precise and profoundly final. The reactions in the room are varied and immediate. Some guests are stunned into silence. Some look relieved because their suspicions are confirmed. A few cry quietly. The board convenes immediately to manage communications and reassure clients. I step off the stage into a flurry of logistics, press statements, client calls, internal memos. The satisfaction of truth being unmasked is complicated by the human reality of seeing 2 people I knew led away in custody. In the weeks that follow, official procedures take over. Police reports are filed and prosecutors evaluate the evidence. The company names an interim financial officer, and we implement the controls I announced. I testify and hand over the organized files that took months to compile. Depositions are scheduled and restitution claims are prepared. The legal process is slow and meticulous, but each step feels like a stitch toward accountability. Emotionally, I navigate a strange tide. There are real moments of relief because the theft has stopped and employees can feel safe. But there is deep grief because a relationship that once held warmth has become a ledger of betrayal. Some nights I wake with anger. Other nights I wake with sorrow, remembering simpler times. I keep a small photograph of my mother from my childhood in a drawer as a private reminder of complexity. The photograph does not undo the facts, but it keeps the memory of tenderness alive. Public reaction is mixed. Some praise the decisive action and the protection of the company. Others criticize the public nature of the reveal and insist the matter should have been handled privately. I learned to let commentary be commentary and to prioritize supporting the team and stewarding the business. I hold town halls where employees can ask questions, and I make counseling services available to anyone affected by what happened. The company stabilizes because the evidence was clear, and because leadership acted promptly. Clients who value reliability stay. Some clients leave, and that is painful, but most return when they see governance and transparency. The board's decision to act openly reduces speculation and restores trust more quickly than silence would have. Months later I sit in a controlled visiting room with my mother. She looks older and quieter. There is no grand reconciliation. She offers an apology that sounds genuine in its limited way. I accept it with guarded pragmatism. Forgiveness, if it will come, will be a slow decision rather than an immediate cure. That is a boundary I set for myself. I do not regret stopping the theft. The choice protected hundreds of people and preserved the company I built. The cost was real and painful. Family bonds were fractured and public humiliation followed. Those consequences remain, and I carry them quietly. Still, the decision established a precedent about accountability and made it clear that betraying trust has consequences. In the months after, I focus on repair and rebuilding. I meet with clients, I reassure employees, and I support those who were hurt by the betrayal. I continue to work with legal counsel until restitution arrangements are in place. I change internal policies so that no single person can authorize significant payments without oversight. These changes feel both practical and moral. At night I sometimes revisit the moment the curtain fell. Sometimes I feel a small, unexpected lightness. Other times I feel the ache of loss. Both sensations exist together, and I have learned to carry them without apology. My life is steadier now, even if it is not simpler. The final lesson is about boundaries and leadership. Protecting what you build sometimes requires making choices that hurt the people you love. That truth is not painless, but it is necessary. I continue the practical work, legal, corporate, emotional, and over time the sharpness softens. The life I am rebuilding is steadier and more honest because of the choice I made. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and comment. Thanks for your attention.